We take the real world and try and abstract it to a test. And we test it and say, okay, if this relates to the real world in this sort of verifiable way. But sometimes, the human body and the biomechanics are so complicated that the abstraction sometimes doesn't work.
Hello and welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we are joined by Dr. Stuart Grant, a seasoned MedTech innovator with over 25 years of experience at industry giants like Johnson Johnson and DePuy. As the founder of Archetype MedTech, Stuart now leads a consultancy dedicated to building startups and scale-ups through the complex journey of bringing medical devices to market. With a PhD in technology and innovation management and a track record of navigating regulatory landscapes across the UK, US, and China, Stuart brings a wealth of knowledge and a unique perspective to the table. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Hey, Aaron, nice to speak to you today.
So what was it that made you originally decide to get into engineering and the manufacturing fields?
So, at high school, I was fairly good at maths and physics, as most engineers have to be. But I also loved art and design. So I was always crafting and drawing and painting. So putting all those sort of disciplines together, I came up with industrial design at the time, or product design here in the UK. So I went and did my bachelor's in product design. After I graduated, I didn't really get a product design job. I got a design engineering job. So, as we know, CAD jockeys, working at the time on Pro Engineer or Unigraphics, modeling various medical devices, primarily hips, knees, and shoulders, and all the intricate instrumentation. So, as my career developed, I moved from design engineering into project engineering, being a project manager. And just started developing my real engineering skills from there as I was on the job. Then I applied to the Institute of Mechanical Engineers here and became a chartered engineer here in the UK. So I was basically becoming a proper qualified, recognized engineer. So I didn't do either a bachelor's or a master's in engineering. I sort of went through the experience level from doing engineering through the last 20 years to become an engineer.
Which, in my opinion, is the right way to do it. I mean, on-the-job training is where you really learn about what it's like being an engineer, right? The education, you learn some things. Certainly, you get a foundation, but you don't really learn how to be an engineer until you start doing the work. And I've always been of the opinion that the piece of paper is nice to have, but, show me what you can do. That's what really matters.
Yeah. And, when I was starting my career, lucky enough in the facilities I work at, they had a prototype shop. So I was able to do the design work, go and talk to the guys in the prototype shop, get the things made, get the feedback on the design, and start learning a little bit about design. And those guys down there, obviously, probably, guys later in their career have a wealth of knowledge to how to actually manufacture these things you're coming up with. So that was a huge help. And nowadays, sometimes the prototype shop is a bit further away from the design engineering office. But having it next door when I was a kid was really formative.
I feel like our paths were actually quite similar. I did a degree formally in engineering, but I was always really interested in design. I never formally did a degree in industrial design or product design, but that was always kind of what I was more interested in. And I started off working for a medical device company or engineering company that was engineering services, and our focus was medical devices. We had a prototype shop right there in the building, and I was out on the mill or the lathe, making prototypes and assembling things and testing things. So I feel an affinity already towards you and your journey. So you worked at a few pretty big places, Johnson Johnson and DePuy. And prior to starting your company, Archetype MedTech, I think you were part of the executive leadership at Johnson and Johnson. Is that right?
Probably not the executive leadership at Johnson. That's quite high up. I was my last role, I was leading the MDR program for DePuy joints, so the recon business. So that was quite a significant role at the time. But I wasn't obviously the J&J executive level.
I must have misread that somewhere. My point was that you had a significant role at Johnson and Johnson. I'm sure things were great. That's a big company. I imagine they take care of their employees, and you decided to jump ship and start Archetype MedTech. What was the impetus for doing that?
So throughout my life, my dad, first of all, my dad's in the military. So I moved around a lot as a kid. Though I stayed in the same corporation for 23 years, I actually moved every 2 or 3 years within that corporation.
Wow.
So I started my career here in the UK in Leeds. I think at 28, I moved to Warsaw, Indiana. Spent 7 years in Warsaw, Indiana, which was absolutely fantastic. Towards the end of that, I was like, what's my next job? Where am I going to go next? Am I going to leave J&J, go and find something else? And then another role cropped up in China, in setting up the R&D facility in China, which doesn't happen very often. That a corporation like J&J says, okay, we're going to set up a big R&D. So I was like, I'm going to apply for that job and I'm going to hopefully get it. And I did. So another 5 years I was in China, working in the facility there in Suzhou, teaching young engineers how to develop medical devices. So the engineers in China at the time, back in 2010, were coming from sort of adjacent industries, Black & Decker, or DeWalt, Grundfos pumps, all those sort of mechanical engineering jobs. And they were looking into medical engineering, and they were transferring those skills to medical engineering. And we had to teach them the medical engineering part of engineering, and develop the products at the same time. So that was really exciting 5 years. After China, I moved back here to the UK in 2016. And at that point, I was thinking, what am I going to do next with my career? So I'm back in the UK. So I took two options. The MDR project was just starting, and this was a significant, as you know, significant upheaval for the industry. And I was given the leadership role for the joint side, so big project, lots of people. So I started that for 5 years, but I also decided probably I need to keep my options open once MDR finishes. It's a big project, but it does have an end date, and I've got to go and find another job. So I started my PhD, my doctorate in medical engineering, not medical engineering, sort of medical innovation. You should probably know what my doctorate is in, right? But medical innovation. So I did that in parallel to doing MDR with the view that probably time MDR finishes, I'll probably move on from J&J if there's no other opportunities that crop up. But I had to keep my options open. And unfortunately, nothing did crop up in J&J. So I decided, okay, here's the chance, mid-40s, let's go and start my consultancy in medical innovation and product development and see how it goes, and help startups and scale-ups develop their devices from all the knowledge I have and get their product to market approval as quickly as possible is my goal now.
And so tell us a little bit about your company. How long has the company existed? Are you the sole employee, or do you have a team, or do you work with contractors? Obviously the focus is medical. That's a large industry. Is there a niche focus within that?
Yeah. So my experience is in orthopedics and surgical devices. So implants and instruments primarily. So that's why I started the scope. There's two people in the company, a business leader who does all the business stuff, and myself who does all the principal consultancy stuff, all the engineering. We both lead the business looking for clients. What the business is set up to do is I lead the innovations for any startup, and I analyze what they're trying to achieve, what the proof of concept is, and what they're trying to get to market approval as quickly as possible. So I analyze that innovation process, all the pieces that have to go together, and put a plan. And that plan basically tells the company I'm working with is, okay, this is going to take you 18 months to 5 years, depending on the complexity, and $1 million to $5 million to develop this first device. And they hopefully will come back with the cash and say, okay, let's do it, Stuart. And at that point, I go and contact my wide network of consultants who are usually working on their own, and then start contracting them onto the project and building that project team for that company. Project team to develop that device. And so the design engineer might be on the project for a year of that 5 years. Medical writing might be at the start and at the end, in making sure that we're not just employing a bunch of people burning a load of cash where sometimes they've got a load of downtime. The plan is within the network's syndicate of subject matter experts, we're using them at the right time for the right job and trying to be as efficient as possible, as quick as possible to get that proof of concept, market approval, and get it into the market as quickly as possible. So these companies don't run out of cash halfway through their development.
Yeah, that sounds like a really smart, efficient way to do it. As you have started archetype and built yourself as a consultant, what are a few of the biggest challenges you've run into?
The Product Development Expo, or PDX, is your chance to learn from subject matter experts providing practical, hands-on training for dozens of different engineering topics. GD&T, Advanced Surface Modeling, DFM, plating and finishing techniques, programming robots, adhesive dispensing, prototyping tips and tricks, and lots more. PDX happens October 21st and 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Learn more at pdexpo.engineer. That's pdexpo.engineer.
I think so. I've been closeted by a corporation my entire career. So I've been focusing on product development, a bit of budgeting. But as a company, then you've got to start thinking about the taxes, the accounting, the legal aspects that you sort of know happen in the background of a corporation, but you don't really get involved unless you have to sign a piece of paper. Then you get involved a bit more. But this is the part that I'm really starting to understand now, is the business side of running a business, not just being the principal consultant or the project leader. That's one thing. The next thing is quite basic, is finding the clients, right? So there's a problem here in the search problem is the clients, obviously they have a startup, so they've got a very small footprint. It might be a surgeon or a salesperson with an idea who's done a few designs and got a prototype. They've got a very small footprint in the market. And archetype, we've also got a very small footprint. We don't deal with many clients at a time, 3 to 5. That's maximum we deal with. So matching those two, the needs together, is always a problem. I think a lot of smaller businesses face this problem. And that's why I do podcasts. I do a lot of writing for the industry magazines. I'm on LinkedIn, to make sure that I'm out there and these startups can find me. The other thing is really critical that I've just sort of discovered in the last year is the cash, the money these businesses need is really critical. And the industry set up around supplying that money, so the angels, the VCs, and eventually the private equity, if you get that far down the line, is really critical. So what I decided to do was go on an executive education course in financing and entrepreneurial business at London Business School, just completed it last week, to really understand that ecosystem so I can help my clients with that ecosystem as well when they come to me, because I can tell them how to do the development work and the innovation work. But if they're short on cash, they can't really execute anyway. So we need to help them also find the cash.
What are some things that you've learned at this training that if I was a new client coming to you saying, Stuart, I've got this idea for a medical device, how would you advise me when it comes to making sure I have enough cash, or where to go to find that cash?
Yeah. So the tutor there, guy called Professor John Mullins, his big point is customer funded businesses are the best. Try never to go and borrow money from a VC or an angel, because they'll take significant equity and the shareholder agreement will be very difficult, especially for a first-time founder, to navigate. So his thesis is try to get the customer to fund the business. And there's lots of models to do that, which we talked about. The other key thing is valuing your business. How much is it really worth? In young companies, because they don't have much sales or no sales at all, or not even a product, valuing that business and figuring out how much equity you should give away to a VC for the millions that you need to develop that medical device is really key. And this course is in London Business School really helped me understand all the gears that the finance people use to value businesses. So they'll value it obviously in the low end, and you'll do your calculation to value at the high end, and the negotiation between those two figures is what the final valuation is, and the amount of equity you'll get to, and the cash you'll get for that equity.
Outside of the funding, which obviously is critical, right? Like you mentioned, what are some of the other challenges or roadblocks that you have commonly seen these medical device startups encounter?
So one of the really important ones is considering the indications, the clinical indications that the device is going to be used for. And as engineers and designers, we get really carried away that our product we've come up with can solve the world's issues. And it might do that. I'm not questioning that. But you can't go and get market approval on solving the world's issues. The regulatory people will just say, no, thanks. It's going to take you loads of clinical studies to prove that you're going to solve these world issues. And it's going to take way too long. So what startups need to think about is what they're going to go with first, what indication they're going to go with first. And it may be a very small, narrow clinical indication in a list of loads of contraindications to start with. And this is called the beachhead strategy. So you get your beachhead, military analogy. And once you've got that beachhead, you can start building on that landing zone, and then get more and more indications as you move forward. But to get that first product in the market, just go for one very narrow indication is really key.
And just to clarify, when you say indication, it's basically what the device is intended to do, right? The problem or procedure it's intended to perform.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. So in medical engineering, medical development, we've got clinical indication, which will be a statement that says exactly what that product is going to treat, the disease state that's going to treat. And then you've got a longer sort of paragraph that's the intended use, how it's going to be used. So the indication is really key, and that's what drives the clinical evaluation and the market approval. That one small sentence on your product is one of the most important.
You've worked in the MedTech areas in the UK, the US, and China. How do regulatory environments differ between the countries, or are they pretty similar?
So MDD and FDA, QSR, the MDD, the original one, were fairly similar. So if you built your design control process around MDD and MDR, you could go to both markets quite easily. With the introduction of MDR in 2019, that changed everything. The clinical requirements on MDR are so much more significant than what the FDA are looking for. MDR is probably the most stringent in the world now to get through. And it is a major difference from FDA. And we know in coming next February, the FDA are going to realign their QSR to ISO 13485. Which is going to be QMSR, Quality Management System Regulation instead, the FDA is calling it. But it's still not going to be anywhere near the MDR regulations. So that's the EU and the US, turning to the UK. So when Brexit happened, the UK took all the EU rules and put them into the UK law. Within MDR was one of those. And the thought was back in whenever it was now, everyone forgets, 2017, 18, something like that. It's been so long. That these laws will be rewritten to how the UK wanted it to happen. Because of all the COVID and all the other political things that happened in the UK here, it just hasn't happened. So the UK medical device law and the MDR is basically the same at the moment. And there's no real plans that I've heard of to change anything. So, and then China, it's been such a while since I've been in China. It's been nearly 9 years. I've not really kept up with the regulations in China because they change so often. So I'm not sure what's going on there. So I can't really comment very easily on that one.
A total tangent question. When you moved from the UK to the US, what were some of the cultural surprises or the culture shocks that you experienced then? If you recall?
Yeah, I do. And so I'll put this in context, right? So I moved from a city, Leeds in the UK, to Warsaw, Indiana. So it's the Midwest, population 15,000 people. And how old was I? I think I was like 28, 29, something like that. I was a bit stupid, a bit young and stupid, and didn't really get the cultural aspects of where I was going. And I made quite a few sort of mistakes, upset a few people. I definitely did in those times, especially the first 6 months, until I got a good friend who was American, and they started telling me what sort of aspects of especially the Midwest. And one of the small ones was, we don't do this in the UK, but if you ask somebody through email to do something, right? Can you send me this document? And they send it to you. The assumption is you have to send a thank you back. And I didn't. And I didn't.
In the US.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the US. And I didn't, because I was like, okay, thanks. You got I said thanks in my head. I didn't say
right. And then the other party feels offended because, hey, didn't even say thank you. Who is this guy? What a jerk.
Yeah. I was like, oh, ouch. So that
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting. Huh. That's just not a thing in UK. You get the thing you requested and that's it. No one expects any exchange beyond that.
Not really. Same in Switzerland, Germany, the Nordics don't really expect if they're going out of their way and you're asking for a huge favor, maybe you'll say thank you. But if it's just a sort of daily job type of thing.
Yeah. That seems more efficient. That's quicker.
Yeah. So that's one I can just think of right now. That's
a great example. Yeah, that's a great example. Well, let me take a short break here and share with everyone that the Being an Engineer podcast is brought to you by Pipeline Design and Engineering, where we don't design pipelines, but we do help companies develop advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services. Learn more at teampipeline.us. The podcast is also sponsored by The Wave, an online platform of free tools, education, and community for engineers. Learn more at thewave.engineer. And today we are speaking with Stuart Grant. So, Stuart, thinking back over the myriad of different projects that you've worked on, not just as a consultant for yourself, but working at various companies over the years, is there one where you can share an R&D project that you work on where there was a problem, there was some challenge? Of course, every project has challenges, but is there one in particular that stands out where there was a challenge that you and your team needed to overcome? What was the challenge and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so I can't really talk in specifics here, but I can talk in generalities about challenges I've faced. And when an issue comes from a product you've designed and engineered, it's gone into the market and something's gone wrong you didn't expect, it's a tough one, right? It's like, what did we do wrong? Why? And during a product development that goes on years and years, you make so many decisions, so many design decisions of every little aspect. And when you're thinking about an instrument set, which this is an example of, where you've got 150 instruments sitting in a instrument tray, all their different designs and all assembled different. And some little thing goes wrong. You're like, wow, how did we miss this? Well, what did we do wrong? And we just look back on the paperwork and think, well, because we just think it was a minor design. We didn't think we need to do as much testing as we thought we did. The risk assessment we didn't show that we needed to do the testing on that particular function. But to say that, what we do, we obviously do a risk assessment to understand what needs to be tested, what's going to fail and what's going to pass. But all our testing is abstractions from the real world, right? We take our test and we abstract it. We take the real world and try and abstract it to a test. And we test it and say, okay, if this relates to the real world in this sort of verifiable way. But sometimes, the human body and the biomechanics are so complicated that the abstraction sometimes doesn't work. In the real world, throws up challenges all the time. You're like, oh, wow, didn't realize that happens in engineering, in special medical engineering. So you have to go back and redesign your tests, redesign the test methods. For the next time you design it, hopefully you'll catch it. But as we know, engineering design, most things are unique. That's why we're engineering it. They're new to the world. So every test can never capture every problem. And you only have a finite time, which is the issue.
Yeah. You have lectured on the history of innovation, which seems like a fascinating topic. That's a class I wouldn't mind sitting in on. How does your understanding of the past inform your approach to current, challenges in your consultancy and the companies that you work with?
Yeah, pretty much the way people have designed stuff. And I'm thinking about the great engineers and designers of the past. So first one is Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who you might know. The US equivalent is Roebling, who designed the Brooklyn Bridge. The wires guy. Ours is Isambard Kingdom Brunel, but you've got people like Josiah Wedgwood, who developed the first potteries and really understood the chemistry of clays and how to make the different colors. So he really did a lot of experimentation. And relating that to now, the way we do things hasn't really changed. The tools and the frameworks and the processes we apply, Agile or CAD, have changed in advance of technology. But our fundamental thinking as a human hasn't changed. I say as a human, because obviously we've got AI changing fundamentally a lot of things at the moment. We'll have to wait and see. But human creativity stays the same. And it all comes down to understanding the world. And when I say that, and this is why I study history of innovation, is to be creative, one of the fundamental things human has to have is a huge bank of knowledge. So as an engineer, you have to sort of cram as much knowledge in there as you can, because creativity comes from combination of two disparate things joining together and going, oh, wow, if I did this, this solves the problem. So having that knowledge base to pull from is really important. And unfortunately, it's just hard graft, reading, watching lots of things on YouTube, observing. One of the things I love to do, and it's a bit sad, I guess, is I used to, in the US, you have Lowe's, go around Lowe's and look at all the mechanisms and designs and see how others have solved them. Or when Sears existed, go into the Craftsman section of Sears. That was always an exciting day out for me.
I know exactly what you mean. I am constantly looking at different products and devices and trying to understand how they were designed and how the mechanisms work and things like that. My wife is always rolling her eyes at me or, thinking I'm silly but this is what we do, right? As engineers, we find it fascinating how other people have designed something. Looking forward to actually, I want to go back for a second. You mentioned how it's difficult to accumulate all this knowledge that is required for innovation to occur, right? Within a human brain, unfortunately, it's not like the Matrix where we can just upload a file of the past 100 years of design and innovation. Does that infer then that, or maybe that's not the right way to ask this? How have you seen younger engineers that don't have that bank of knowledge? Are there any pro tips or best practices that you have observed or that you recommend for younger engineers to climb that hill more quickly? Or is it just a grind and takes years and years and years of observing and learning and studying?
So because I like the product development process side, so young engineers, I usually give them 2 books to kick them off. One of them is called New Product Development by Eppinger and Ulrich, which just teaches them what the whole process is. And the other one is Biodesign, that teaches them the biomedical engineering side of innovation. So that helps them get a key in. And it is just, looking at the trade magazines every month or going to as many conferences as you can and see if you can just build that knowledge. But it is just, I don't know if there's a shortcut of just reading and attending and observing everything that's going on around you to understand the problem. It is just as quickly you can accumulate that knowledge, but you also have to be able to recall it as well. And that's where the creativity part comes in as well, to be able to recall that knowledge.
I remember working with a brand new engineer years ago, and every couple of weeks, it seemed like he'd come back and say, hey, what can I do to really accelerate this process and get to like a senior level engineer, much, much faster. And I never felt like I had a great answer for him back then, but I think today, looking back, the way I'd answer it is you just have to spend more time. If you want to climb that ladder faster, if you want to accumulate that experience and knowledge faster, spend more time doing your job, or not even doing your job necessarily, but spend more time becoming an engineer, right? Whether it's at work or on your own time for personal projects, just do things related to engineering more often. It just comes down to the number of reps that you can get in and what time frame can you get those reps in, right? Spend a couple of hours after work, right, on your own, reading things and trying things and building things. And so, long story short, I agree with you. I think it comes down to spending more time. And if you want to cut it off at 8 hours a day after work is over, great. That's fine, right? No harm in that. But you're not going to grow as an engineer as fast as someone else who's putting in extra hours beyond the minimum. I think I would also say that having mentors is really, really important. I think that is one key that unlocks, I don't know about acceleration, but it's not going to slow you down anyway. Not having those mentors to turn to, I think, can be an impediment to growing as an engineer.
That's a great point. I just add to that. So I'm a mentor for some college kids doing engineering, but I'm also I also have mentors. So both ways. So people teaching me how to be a better leader and consultant. And then I translate what I've learned back down the ladder. And I think we all should try and do that all the way up to the end of, our careers and past. A couple of my mentors were in their 70s. And they were like, well, why didn't you go and try that, Stuart? I'm like, okay, I'll go and try that. That's a good idea. Didn't think of that. But it's some basics. Just an engineer coming out of college doesn't quite write a CV very well, or a cover letter, or needs to do a dummy interview, and you can help them do that. Those sort of things are so important. So the basics. Yeah. If you remember back when you were younger, thinking, "Shit, I need a job. Well, I'm going to go and find a job." If somebody was there just to say, my dad was in the military. He had no real experience of getting a university degree and going and getting a profession. He joined the military at 16 years old. He was there for 26 years. So, but that's why you need mentors sometimes, is the people to fill in those gaps. And they've always helped me through my career.
I'm going to go back to something you said earlier during this conversation. You mentioned, I think it was when you were at J&J and you're finishing up on a big project for them and thinking about what's next. What am I going to do after this? Nothing really popped up at J&J, so you decided to go off on your own. You said something to the effect of, if I don't find something here, I'm going to have to go look for another job. I think a lot of engineers, that would be a terrifying prospect. I have to go look for another job. I don't want to go look for another job. I'm happy. I'm safe. I'm comfortable here. Yet it seemed like you had this overwhelming confidence that it's not that big a deal. I'm just going to go find something else. Where did that confidence come, do you think?
Confidence, I'm not sure. I was thinking, I talked to my wife at the time, it was 3 or 4 years ago. If we don't do it now in my mid-40s, I'll stay in a corporation till I'm 65, right? For the next 20 years. So what do I want to do? And looking at the leaders before me in where their careers went after like 50s, I was like, do I want to do that? And I won't go into details, do I want to be that person? I was like, let's go and try this. I've got a bit of savings behind me to do it for a couple of years to see how it goes. If not, I can always probably go and get another corporate medical engineering leadership role somewhere. In medical engineering is such a small field. I either go back into corporate or go into more of a contracting role in medical engineering, doing projects, 6-month projects or 1-year projects at a time as a contractor, which works as well. So there was many options. I knew there was many options if this doesn't work for me to pursue after this anyway. So it was like, it's a risk, but the risk is medium, let's say.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. You had enough money saved up. So if it didn't work out, you had a year or two to fund yourself. And then there are always going to be opportunities for a person with your skill set.
And that's why you've got to keep educating yourself and learning through your career, right? Because you've got to have that skill set that's still applicable today.
Yeah. Yep. What are some of the trends that you're looking forward to in MedTech, medical device engineering? What do you think is going to be the next big thing 3, 4, 5 years from now?
Can your project benefit from simulation? Get in touch with the team at SimuTech Group, a trusted partner in engineering, simulation, and consulting. SimuTech Group empowers engineers with cutting-edge ANSYS simulation software, expert consulting, and comprehensive training. Whether you're tackling structural analysis, fluid dynamics, or electromagnetics, their team of certified engineers helps you innovate and optimize. Join the ranks of top-performing engineers who trust SimuTech Group to bring their ideas to life. Visit simutechgroup.com to learn more and discover how they can support your success.
Yeah, so obviously the big things now is AI and robotics. I saw a stat I think it was 150 robotics companies, surgical robotics companies started last year in all different aspects of the body. So hard tissue and soft tissue. So they are going to obviously go through a level of consolidation over the next 12 months, 24 months and find out who wins. AI is going to get more and more into particularly imaging. It's doing a lot of imaging of CT and MRI scans to find various tumors. But that's going to go more into surgical imaging, those surgical structures, using AI to help doing that, which is probably going to be really important. So that's going to be like a platform technology, I think. So companies will build a imaging platform technology that then will be put into a surgical robot, but might also be a platform technology. When I say platform, the iPhone is a platform that's used with apps, right? So then an end company will then create a indication-specific robot based on all those different platforms that other companies have developed, which will be exciting. At the moment, it's very what's the word? it's very top down. So company develops the robot, the software, everything that goes into that capital piece that goes into the OR. I think it'd be more modular as we move forward.
Oh, that's very interesting. Huh. Yeah. Right now, I don't pretend to know this landscape as well as others out there who are more experts in this field. But as far as surgical robotics, it seems to me like Intuitive Surgical is way ahead of everyone else. And in recent years, some of the other strategics like Stryker and Medtronic and J&J have been developing their own surgical robots. Do you think that, is anyone going to catch Intuitive? You mentioned 150 robotics companies started up last year. Is that a race not worth racing, or do you think that there are some companies that are going to catch up to them?
I guess they'll have to develop something really specific. The Intuitive aren't addressing at the moment. So, yeah, and think about the Da Vinci. Da Vinci was created 30 years ago. It's into version 5 or 6 at the moment. I can't remember which one. So they've developed a robot every 5 years or so and increased those indications for the beachhead thing. The first version only did something very basic. But as that 5 versions have come along, they've increased the capabilities of that thing over 25 years. It's a long time, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you got CMR here in the UK, sort of trying to compete with Intuitive. But yeah, I think on the hard tissue side, there'll probably be 2 or 3 robots. There may be on J&J or Stryker or ZB. There might be somebody else that all these companies, these implant companies actually use to implant their products. At the moment, it's all bespoke. It's all vertically integrated designs. Maybe that might change. The other thing, VR, AR, VR, XR. HoloLens is being discontinued. So has Apple Vision been discontinued. At the moment, we've only got the Meta, whatever it's called, device now, and the Hive and a few other Magic Leap. I'm not sure that there's much more legs in VR at the moment. I think people have got a bit tired of it. Maybe like 3D screens that we had 10 years ago. It's just not doing what it said it's going to do. So maybe the current incarnation of those devices might sort of fade away, and in 5 or 10 years, a totally new type of VR system will come along.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't remember who the companies were, but I remember tablets were a thing before Apple came out with their iPad, but they never really caught on, and it wasn't a market that was growing, and it kind of seemed like they just went away. And then Apple came out with the iPad, and all of a sudden, I've got to have an iPad, I've got to have a tablet, and now they're ubiquitous. So I wonder, how that will repeat itself for XR. We shall see.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is anecdotal, but the use of iPads is decreasing a little bit at the moment as well, from a professional perspective. Mostly gaming on your iPad now or watching movies, it's not as a professional device I think they hoped it to be.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I just use my laptop.
Yeah.
Well, if I was a young engineer interested in getting into surgical robotics, and I was asking you for advice, what kind of advice would you give me?
I don't know what advice. Surgical robotics. It's not really my area of real expertise. I guess as a young engineer, you've got a lot of time to see the robotics industry develop. So go and find a local surgical robotics company and join them, knowing though they might not be the winners in the race, but you'll learn a lot. And that's the thing about when companies fail. The companies fail, but the people don't. The people go on to do other things, other great stuff. So go and find a local robotics company that'll employ you, hopefully pay you as well, and learn something. And then just discover the market that way.
That's wonderful. Doing is better than learning about doing. Well, Stuart, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your precious time and wisdom and insights with us. We've hit on a lot of things. Is there anything else that we should talk about? Any other questions we should explore that we haven't talked about yet?
I think one of the questions you usually ask is about the speed of engineering and how you get faster than that. And I just would like to say that my whole business is moved to the cloud, right? Now I don't have the incumbents of a corporate IT system that I have to walk under. I just made sure I went out and got the SaaS products that really help my business moving. And I know before in December, you talked to John Herstig on OnDesign. After that, I went and made sure I got a license for OnDesign. Not OnDesign, Onshape, sorry. OnDesign is something else. Onshape, because that is a great tool. And I'm encouraging some of the CAD people I work with who are SolidWorks fanatics to try Onshape because it works so much easier in this environment where we're all working from home in different offices and all sorts over the place. So, yeah.
I think it's the future. Yeah, I think Onshape, they've done such a great job. And, SolidWorks is very much still the incumbent, and they're going to be hard to dethrone just because they're everywhere. But I think it's going to happen. And we don't use Onshape at the office, so this is not a paid plug for Onshape or anything like that. But we use it we have a little volunteer program called CAD Club where we teach kids how to use CAD, and we use Onshape there because it's so much easier to get into. You can run it on, these kids just have crummy public school issued laptops, right? They're not workstations by any means. And it works great. Onshape works great. There's nothing to install. They can collaborate online on the same design at the same time. It's just like working on a Word document, two people working on the same Word document in different places at the same time. Same thing. So really an incredible platform. And I think 5 to 10 years from now, I don't know, SolidWorks.
And John is an amazing guy. He's a legend as well.
He is. Yeah. Yep. A legend. It's incredible, right? The same guy started SolidWorks, which just has defined CAD in our generation for the industry, and now he's invented Onshape, and that I think is going to, my opinion, going to dethrone SolidWorks over the next 5 to 10 years. So he's literally brought probably, I don't know, 60-70% of the CAD to the industry over this 30-40 year period. Amazing.
Yeah. I think my last comment about, learning is, I'm dyslexic. I hate reading. But I have to. And I have to force myself to read a book at least one a month. I try to do more than one a month, but one a month is my target. And I can remember the first book I read, and I didn't read a proper book until I was 23, cover to cover, because I was trying to always, as engineers or designers, always trying to avoid reading. But I read this first book. It was called Longitude by Dava Sobel, and it got me into reading. It was a science book, and that's where it took me down, reading about science and innovation and engineering and just pursuing that whole idea. But as engineers, we hate reading. So one of the things you got to do, unfortunately, is read a lot to get that knowledge base of what's going on out there.
On that subject, any great book recommendations that you can share, specifically some that might be interesting to the engineering audience here? Science fiction or something like that.
I'm just looking over to my bookshelf because I was so one of the really great books is called The Idea Factory. It's about Bell Labs from the 1940s to probably the 1980s with Claude Shannon. The guys who invented the transistor in there, Shannon, Shockley, and I can't remember the third guy who won the Nobel Prize. But it was all about how Bell Labs in Jersey was developed, all the engineers and scientists there. It's a really, really good book. Just looking at the author, John Gertner.
Terrific. All right. I haven't read that one. That sounds fascinating. Well, Stuart, thank you so much again for being with us today. Really appreciate it. This is a fascinating conversation, and I think a lot of people are really going to benefit from and appreciate all of this. So thank you again so much.
You're welcome, Aaron. It's great chat today.
I'm Aaron Moncur, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services, visit us at teampipeline.us. To join a vibrant community of engineers online, visit thewave.engineer. Thank you for listening.